Welcome back to my channel, Catalyst Medweb Academy, where we ignite understanding and make learning easier. In our today's class, we will be dissecting pituitary gland. This is our second video under endocrinology. Pituitary gland is one of the vital glands in our body, in the sense that its secretion or its hormone regulates various glands in our body as well. Now, the pituitary gland is a small gland that is located at the base of the skull. It is situated in an area known as the sella tussica of the sphygmoid bone at the base of the skull. That is a short introduction to the pituitary gland. Now, what are the divisions of this pituitary gland? Pituitary gland are divided into two. There are anterior pituitary part and the posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary are also known as adenohypophysis, while the posterior pituitary is also called neurohypophysis. Pituitary gland, on a note here, it is also called hypophysis. We said pituitary gland is divided into two parts. It has two divisions. There is anterior and posterior pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland is also called adenohypophysis, whereby the posterior pituitary gland is also called neurohypophysis. Now, this diagram here will show us the locations of the pituitary gland. We said that the pituitary gland is located and a depression present in a sphygmoid bone. Here is our sphygmoid bone. And this groove here is what we refer to as sella tussica. Sella tussica. And in this depression, this is where the pituitary gland is located. This is the anterior pituitary gland and the posterior pituitary gland. This one is telling us, is showing us the location of the pituitary gland. Here is our hypothalamus, and up here we are having optic chiasm. So this diagram here is showing us the location of the pituitary gland at the base of the skull in the groove known as the sella tussica of the sphygmoid bone. Development of the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland, despite the fact that they have been divided into the two parts, the anterior and the posterior pituitary gland, their development, they differ in their development, also as well as they differ in their structure and as well as their function. Anterior pituitary gland. Anterior pituitary gland is ectoderm in origin. Is ectodermal in origin, and it is arise from pharynx epithelium as a Rathke pouch. Rathke pouch. While the posterior pituitary, is neuroectoderm in origin, and it arises from the hypothalamus as a downward diverticulum. Downward diverticum. So this is about the development of the pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland is ectoderm in origin, and it arises from the pharyngeal epithelium as a Rathke pouch, whereby the posterior pituitary is neuroectoderm in origin, and it arises due as a downward growth known as the downward diverticulum from the hypothalamus. Next is regulation of the pituitary gland. We should know that most of the hormones of the pituitary gland, both the anterior and the posterior pituitary gland, they are being regulated by the hypothalamus. So there is a relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. This relationship is what they call hypothalamo-hypophyseal relationship. Hypothalamo-hypophyseal relationship. That is the relationship that occurs between the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland by pituitary stake or the infundibulum. Thalamus regulates pituitary gland by the secretion of either releasing or inhibitory substances. Now, substances that are released by the hypothalamus, they reaches the pituitary gland. Since we are having two types of pituitary gland, two divisions of the pituitary gland, the anterior pituitary gland and the posterior pituitary gland, their means of relationship. The means of relationship between hypothalamus and anterior pituitary gland is different from the connection between the hypothalamus and posterior pituitary gland. Now, hypothalamus is connected to the anterior pituitary gland through hypothalamo-hypophyseal blood vessels or portal vessels, whereby the hypothalamus is connected to the posterior pituitary gland by hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. Hypophyseal tract. So, on a nutshell, the pituitary gland, the means of connection between the pituitary gland and the secretion of the hypothalamus reaches anterior pituitary gland through hypothalamo-hypophyseal blood vessel, whereas for the posterior pituitary gland, it reaches the posterior pituitary gland by hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. This diagram is showing us, here is our hypothalamus. These are the nucleus of the hypothalamus. This one is paraventricular nucleus, supraoptic nucleus. Here we will be having optic chassis, and this connection that we are having here is what we call hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. That is the means of, that is all the secretion of the hypothalamus. They reaches the posterior pituitary gland through hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. This is our posterior pituitary gland. Here is our anterior pituitary gland. We say that the means of connection between or the secretions of the hypothalamus reaches the anterior pituitary gland by hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal vessels. Portal vessels. So here, this diagram shows us the relationship between the anterior pituitary gland, the posterior pituitary gland, and the hypothalamus together with their connections. Now, we'll go into the anterior pituitary gland proper. Anterior pituitary gland, as we have said before, it's also called adenohypophysis, and it is also called master gland because the hormone secreted in the anterior pituitary gland regulate or play a role in most of the other glands in our body as well. Divisions. Anterior pituitary gland is divided into three parts. As you can see from this diagram, we will be having pars distalis. In between there is pars tuberalis. And between the anterior pituitary gland and the posterior pituitary gland, there is what they call pars intermediaries. So pituitary gland is divided into three parts: the pars distalis, pars tuberalis, and pars intermedia. These are the divisions of anterior pituitary gland. Up next is the histology of the pituitary gland. Histologically, pituitary gland contains majorly two different types of cells, and these cells, they are the chromophobe cells and the chromophile cells. The chromophobe cells are those cells that are not properly stained, and we should know that the chromophobe cells, they do not participate in the secretory function. They only serve as a precursor for the chromophile cells. The chromophile cells are those cells that contain granules and they are darkly stained. It has two types of cells: the chromophobe and the chromophile cells. As I already said, that these chromophobe cells, they do not participate in any secretory function. They only serve as a precursor for chromophile cells. And also the chromophobe cells, they are not properly stained because they lack granules, whereby the chromophile cells, they are darkly stained and they are the one responsible for the production of the hormones in the anterior pituitary gland. The chromophiles are further classified into two, based on two categories. They are classified based on the nature of their stain, as well as they are classified based on the nature of their secretion. Based on the nature of the stain, the chromophile cells are divided into acidophilic and bacidophilic cells. While based on the nature of their secretion, they are divided into 5 cells. There is somatotrophs, lactotrophs, gonadotrophs, thyrotrophs, and corticotrophs. Now these somatotrophs, they are the cells that secrete growth hormones. Lactotrophs is the cell that secretes prolactin. Gonadotrophs is the one that secretes gonad hormones, the luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Thyrotrophs secretes thyroid stimulating hormone, while the corticotrophs secretes corticotropic hormones. Among these 5 cells, these somatotrophs and the lactotrophs, they are the only acidophilic cells. In fact, somatotrophs constitute about 30 to 40% of acidophilic cells. After knowing the different type of the cells that we are having in the anterior pituitary gland, up next is the regulation of the hormones, regulation of the secretion of anterior pituitary gland. As we have already said, pituitary gland is being regulated by hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus is the one that is secreting, either releasing or inhibitory substance, which will control the anterior pituitary gland. All the secretions of the hypothalamus, they reaches anterior pituitary gland through hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal vessels. The substances that are released by the hypothalamus are called factors or the neurohormones. Now, these hormones, they are the ones that will control the secretions in the anterior pituitary gland. Hypothalamus releases 7 different types of factors that controls the anterior pituitary gland. Among them are, there is growth hormone releasing hormone, growth hormone releasing polypeptide, growth hormone inhibitory hormone, gonadotropic releasing hormone, thyrotropin releasing hormone, corticotropic releasing hormone and prolactin inhibitory hormone. These are the 7 factors that are released by hypothalamus, which controls the secretion of anterior pituitary gland. From their names, growth hormone releasing hormone, it stimulates the release of growth hormone. Growth hormone releasing polypeptide has 2 functions. It stimulates somatotropes to release growth hormone, and as well it stimulates the hypothalamus to release growth hormone releasing hormone. Growth hormone inhibitory hormone, it is said to be called somatostatin, and it is a factor that inhibits the release of growth hormones from the anterior pituitary gland. Gonadotropic releasing hormone stimulates the release of gonadotropic hormones. Thyrotropin releasing hormone stimulates the release of thyroid stimulating hormone. Corticotropic releasing hormone stimulates the release of adrenal corticotropic hormone from the anterior pituitary, while prolactin inhibitory hormone, it is believed to be a dopamine, it inhibits the release of prolactin. Hormones of the anterior pituitary gland. Anterior pituitary gland secretes 7 different types of hormones, which are: it secretes growth hormone, it secretes thyroid stimulating hormone, it secretes adrenal corticotropic hormone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, prolactin, and beta lipotropin. These are the 7 groups of the hormones that the anterior pituitary gland secreted.